Close your eyes and picture the world's largest country under financial pressure it can't admit. Behind the sharp suits and polished press conferences, the numbers are whispering a different story, one of exhaustion, shortages, and quiet fear. The Kremlin says everything is fine. The data says otherwise. Tonight, we pull apart those numbers and follow the trail of a $51 billion deficit that's shaking the foundations of Russia's economy. Because this isn't a rumor. It's not an opposition blog. It's Russia's own finance ministry revealing a hole so large it can't be filled without sacrifice, economic, social, maybe even political. Let's begin. 10 months into the fiscal year, Moscow's official figures show a deficit of 4.2 trillion rubles, around 51 billion US dollars. That's more than 53 billion US dollars worse than the same period a year earlier. Revenues have barely grown, up less than 1%, spending up 15%. And most of that increase isn't roads or schools, it's defense. Since early 2022, Russia has been waging a war that costs billions every month. Ammunition, fuel, replacement parts, compensation payments. Each line item eats deeper into the treasury. The result? The steepest budget shortfall in a generation. To cover it, the government borrows domestically and dips into its sovereign wealth fund, the same rainy day account built during the oil boom years. Economists warn that if withdrawals continue at this pace, the fund's liquid reserves could vanish within 2 years. That's the arithmetic. Now the human side. Inflation is back. The official rate hovers near 7%. Ordinary Russians say it feels double. Food prices climb week after week. Bread, cooking oil, vegetables, imported medicine costs triple what it did before sanctions. Wages lag behind everything. And for families already stretched by conscription, every ruble counts. Workers whisper that they're paid late. Pensioners skip meals to buy heart pills. Parents line up for discounted school lunches that disappear before noon. Life has become a calculation: which bill to pay, which item to postpone, what to live without. The Kremlin calls this temporary strain, but inside the system, even loyal officials sound uneasy. Alexander Karachev, head of the Presidential Directorate for Monitoring and Analyzing Social Processes, published a rare warning in a state-run journal. He wrote that Russia risks fragmentation of society and even internal collapse if divisions keep widening. A divided country becomes easy prey for external forces, he said. For an insider to print those words is extraordinary. It means concern has reached the upper floors. He isn't alone. The chief of Russia's largest bank, German Gref of Sberbank, told the president that economic growth is very modest and that the macro environment is challenging. In plain language, credit is shrinking and people aren't borrowing because they're afraid of the future. When the bankers start admitting weakness on television, it means the problem is too large to hide behind slogans. Why does it matter? Because Russia's economy runs on confidence, the belief that tomorrow will look roughly like today. Lose that, and every decision changes. Businesses stop investing, households stop spending, regions stop hiring. That fear becomes a self-fulfilling slowdown. Already, small and medium enterprises report record closures. Supply chains fray under sanctions. Replacement parts from Asia cost more and fail faster. A transport company in Yekaterinburg says its truck fleet is half grounded for lack of spares. Airlines retire planes early to cannibalize components. Industry calls it import substitution. Workers call it what it is, shortage. Meanwhile, military spending keeps climbing. The finance ministry predicts total expenditures of 421 billion US dollars this year, up more than 15%. Social budgets can't keep pace. Teachers' salaries freeze, hospitals ration supplies, rural infrastructure projects halt mid-construction. One regional accountant told reporters, everything is redirected to defense. Everything. And while the government pumps money into weapons, the war drains the workforce. Over 1 million men of working age are gone, killed, wounded, or deployed. Factories recruit older workers. Shops close on weekdays for lack of staff. It's a demographic wound that no stimulus can heal. Officials try to plug gaps by importing labor from Central Asia. But visa delays, housing shortages, and rising hostility make that solution fragile. Even those migrants now send most of their earnings home rather than spending locally. Capital leaves as quickly as it enters. Add falling oil revenue and the picture turns darker. Sanctions and price caps slash profits. Russia now earns roughly $92 billion from oil and gas compared with more than $150 billion before the war. The state taxes what it can, but export discounts mean less for the budget non-energy sectors can't compensate. That gap, the $51 billion hole, is the cost of trying to sustain a wartime economy under peacetime expectations. The central bank fights back with higher interest rates to defend the ruble. But every hike suffocates small business credit. Entrepreneurs who survived the pandemic say this squeeze feels worse. Sales falling, loans expensive, optimism gone. Halfway through this investigation, one thing is clear. The numbers aren't abstract. They translate directly into pressure on everyday life and pressure on the government itself. Inside the corridors of power, people are asking dangerous questions. How long can reserves last? How high can inflation go before anger turns outward? Can Russia keep funding the war and still pay pensions, health care, and subsidies? Karachev's essay hinted at answers. He listed 5 dangers facing Russia, and civil war was at the top. He recalled earlier centuries when internal divisions tore the country apart. The subtext was unmistakable. History can repeat. That warning coincides with new polling, rarely published but widely whispered, showing public fatigue with the conflict many citizens say they want it to end as soon as possible. They still fear saying it out loud, but the sentiment exists. Economists call it war weariness. Politicians call it risk. The risk is visible in the budget breakdown itself. Classified expenditures now account for nearly 1/3 of federal spending, 3 times higher than before the invasion. What's inside those secret lines, no one outside a small circle knows. But secrecy has a cost. It breeds suspicion even among insiders. A mid-level official recently described the atmosphere as tight-lipped chaos. Each ministry protects its slice. None knows the total picture, and as auditing decreases, corruption inevitably grows. Foreign trade isn't helping. Traditional partners like Serbia are trimming joint ventures with Russian companies to avoid U.S. sanctions. Britain and the EU plan to phase out shipping and insurance services for Russian LNG by 2026. Even allies are hedging their bets. The world's patience with Moscow's war economy is wearing thin. All of this leaves the government juggling impossible math. Cut defense and risk the front. Cut welfare and risk unrest. Raise taxes and strangle what's left of business. Every option feeds another crisis. Economists estimate that sustaining current war spending will push the deficit beyond $70 billion next year. If that happens, inflation could hit double digits again, wiping out household savings and deepening poverty. And yet, official television insists the economy is booming. Anchors point to unemployment below 4%, without mentioning that tens of thousands of workers are now in uniform rather than on payrolls. They praise industrial output, ignoring that most of it goes to ammunition. People see the contradiction. They live it. They know a real boom doesn't involve shrinking choice and rising prices. Privately, regional governors complain of impossible orders from Moscow. Raise wages, build factories, expand social aid, all with shrinking funds. Some quietly resign. Others pretend compliance, using creative accounting to mask shortfalls. The cycle continues, numbers adjusted, reality unchanged. Still, the public mood is shifting. Patriotism no longer outweighs pressure. Telegram channels, once filled with triumph, now host debates about food prices and draft notices. Citizens rarely protest openly, but silence is its own statement. When people stop applauding, leaders notice. So, where does this lead? If the deficit keeps widening and trust keeps eroding, Russia faces a slow-motion erosion of capacity, economic, institutional, psychological. Not an overnight collapse, but a steady weakening. Factories can't modernize without imports. Banks can't lend without confidence. Workers can't spend what they don't earn. The war absorbs everything, money, manpower, attention, and leaves little for growth. Analysts call this the resource trap. It's what happens when a country rich in natural assets spends them faster than it can replace them. Every barrel of oil sold at a discount buys another week of stability, another month of illusion. But illusions have interest rates too. The most sobering part? The warning signs are being acknowledged from within. When a presidential advisor writes about internal collapse, when the head of Sberbank confesses weak growth, when finance ministry data shows a record deficit, that's not propaganda. That's the system talking to itself. And still, the official message stays the same. Everything is under control. Control is a fragile word. It lasts until the next report, the next market shock, the next oil price dip. Control is a story told at press conferences while accountants quietly draft new borrowing plans. Control is what every government insists on having until it doesn't. Right now, Russia's financial future depends on variables it can't command: global energy demand, sanctions, exchange rates, the duration of war. None bend easily to willpower. That's why economists describe the Kremlin strategy as survival, not development. Survival buys time, but time is running out. Let's bring it back to the number that started this investigation: $51 billion. That figure is more than statistics. It's evidence of strain. Each billion a reflection of decisions made under pressure. Spend here, cut there, hide the rest. Over months, it becomes habit. Over years, it becomes the system. Inside that system, voices like Karachev's and Greff's are warnings, not rebellion. They show awareness that denial alone can't balance a ledger, and awareness inside the Kremlin, however faint, is the first sign of reckoning. No one can say how or when that reckoning arrives, but economics has a way of forcing truth into the open. You can postpone payments, you can't cancel consequences, and so the story closes where it began. With a government telling its people everything is fine while its accountants tally numbers that say otherwise. The question now isn't whether Russia can hide the deficit, it's whether it can survive the choices that created it. Because deficits aren't just money, they're mirrors. They reflect what a nation values and what it sacrifices. $51 billion is more than a balance sheet gap. It's the measure of a country stretched to its limits by war, sanctions, and ambition. And every new ruble spent to sustain that illusion brings the reckoning closer. This has been an independent investigation into Russia's fiscal reality, verified data, open sources, and the voices inside the system itself. Stay curious, stay informed, because numbers don't lie, no matter who tries to silence them, and when the truth finally breaks through the noise, it won't come from speeches, it will come from the math. End of report.